We just got the numbers back for May, and on paper, it looks like we're in a balanced market and things are stable. But agents who have boots to the ground are seeing something different. And in this video, I'm going to explain what the public isn't seeing when they look at our real estate market. I'm Sean, and I'm a real estate agent serving Victoria, BC. And on this YouTube channel, I make videos to help people understand how to navigate our market. If this brings you value, please like and subscribe. And if you have plans involving real estate, you can reach out to me using the link in the description. We'll set up some time to jump on a call together. Okay, let's jump into today's video. So when we look at the monthly report released by the Victoria Real Estate Board, everything seems fine. Sure, we finished the month with above average standing inventory. We finished the month with a little over 3,700 properties on the market, and that is high. It's up about 18% from the previous month in April. So that's definitely a factor and something that could be a concern, but that was offset by the fact that we had a tremendous number of homes sell in May. We had 758 properties come off the market, which if we look at absorption rate, which is the percentage of the standing inventory that gets picked up every month, it's about 20%. Now, 20% is squarely in the middle of a buyer's market. And if you follow months of inventory, which is something that I reference a lot, it's 5 months of inventory, meaning we stop listing homes and we just chew through what's on the market. It would take about 5 months for all those properties to sell. Now, again, this sits squarely in what we consider a balanced market. So what's the concern? Here's the reality. When we look at this market, we are sitting very close to a seller's market. I was just referencing months of inventory being 5 months. And if we get to the 6-month mark, that's what we would consider a buyer's market. So it won't take much to tip the scale, especially considering the fact that we're sitting on so much inventory. We've basically set ourselves up so that if we don't have another record month of sales in June, we're going to tip the scale into a buyer's market really quickly. And there are a few other things that they don't talk about in the report, which we see boots to the ground, that have us concerned. The first one is price reductions versus pendings. So we pulled the past week before we shot this video, and when we looked at the number of properties that reduced their price versus the number of properties that went sold under contract, the number of price reductions actually exceeded the number of sales. We had 178 price reductions to only about 150 sales. Now, we don't normally see statistics like that in a balanced market or a seller's market. This is very much the kind of thing that you would expect in a buyer's market. So favor is starting to shift towards the buyers. Now, without being able to provide statistical evidence, another thing that I can tell you that we're seeing boots to the ground is an unpredictability in which properties are going to sell and how much they're going to sell for. We're seeing homes that go to market, which we're expecting to get attention and sell in a reasonable amount of time, just sit there. So there's a certain unpredictability that is typically an indicator of buyer concern, and it's also it's a symptom of an abundance of choice. When buyers feel like they have all kinds of options, a lot of the time they just sit and wait because they feel like something better might come out or that perfect home is just around the corner. The other thing that we're seeing that has us concerned is that any given asset class will have a very wide range of potential sale prices. So, back in COVID, we'd rarely see single family detached in the core for under $1 million. And today we're seeing them sell for the same price that they might have sold for back during COVID times on the high end. So we're still seeing really attractive, healthy sale prices. But on the low end, the bottom seems like it's dropping out. We're seeing single family detached in the core for mid 7s or 800. That is a huge range, and it makes it really hard for people to know what to expect when they place their home on the market. When you look at all these factors, it really paints a picture that we could be in for a bit of price softening later this year. And I don't have a crystal ball. All I can tell you is what we're looking at right now. But when we look at these factors and we look at the number of homes that are standing as inventory in the market right now, it paints a bit of concern as to where the market could go. So one of the things that tends to be a mistake people make is to assume that a softening market is a bad market. People like to generalize things into good and bad because it's just kind of our natural instinct. And the reality is that there's no such thing as a good or bad market. There are just different markets, and depending on your move, this could be an advantage to you. So even though it might be a little harder to sell, or it might take more time, or you might not have the same level of security in what you assume that you could sell for, this is a market that offers a lot of opportunity. And so what I'd like to do is share a few places that I see opportunity in a softening market. Remember, a real estate transaction is often the sum of two sides. And so if you have a purchase and a sale, well, regardless of what the market's doing, if both those transactions take place at about the same time in a comparable price range, you're essentially going to be unaffected by the market. In fact, if the market's lower in terms of price, you'll just save money on the soft costs, and chances are you'll have more selection when you purchase. So, for example, one group of people that I think have a huge opportunity is upgraders. When you have a larger home that is more valuable, it would be affected more by the market. If the whole market comes down 5% as a whole, well, that's a bigger number of 3 million than it is of 850. So if you're making an upgrade, this is a fantastic market to consider doing it in. Additionally, lower price homes are financially available to a greater number of purchasers. Think about it, more people can afford 850 than 3 million. So there's a larger market for starter homes. If you are upgrading, you can go and shop to your heart's content and take your time and find that perfect property with a relative amount of confidence that you could have a predictable experience on the purchase. Make sure that you're smart about how much time you give yourself to do that, but generally this is something that can work. As well, those larger homes might be willing even to give you a condition on the sale of your property. Talk to your realtor or reach out to me if you're curious about which segments of our market might be open to that right now. Another group that I think should consider right now an opportunity is actually the inverse move, which sounds counterintuitive. How could it work well both ways? Well, downsizers are people who can still sell their home because homes of all types will sell every single month. Now, you'll need to present your home at a really high level in order to make it happen. But if you're selling a larger home and you get the sale cared for first, the beauty is that you can shop the starter market with greater selection. And traditionally, it's been really scary for downsizers to sell their home because they're stepping into a more competitive market and they're worried they might end up homeless. The last group that I think should really pay attention right now is first-time buyers. We've all heard the classic statement, buy low, sell high. But the funny thing is that people without a lot of experience in real estate tend to run for the hills when the market's a little bit softer. This is a fantastic opportunity. We've got reasonable interest rates, we've got favorable lending guidelines, and houses, are on sale. There's greater selection. You can pick up a beautiful home for a great price if you're smart about it. And I know that right now average price has stuck, but there are those properties that aren't standing out in the market. And if you're smart about what you target, you might be able to negotiate yourself a bit of a discount, which is rare in premium markets in Canada. So if you do have a home to sell, and remember, homes sell every month of the year. There's no market that turns off. We just see an imbalance or we see fewer sales taking place. And again, this hasn't happened yet, but we're seeing early warning signs that only realtors are really aware of. With that said, if you have a home to sell, there are 3 things that I recommend you really take into account when you list. The 3 P's: pricing, presentation, and patience. Okay? First of all, patience. If you are listing a home, I don't recommend that you price it high and let it sit and rot on the market. That's not what I mean by patience. What I mean is you should put yourself in a position where you have ample time to sell your home. Don't put yourself in a position where you will be forced to sell quickly. That's where people end up in a really tricky situation. So if you have a home to sell and you plan to purchase, I recommend listing and selling first so you know exactly how much money you have in your pocket and you don't purchase something and then end up between a rock and a hard place, needing to sell quickly and ending up selling for a discount. The second thing that you need to do is make sure that you're presenting your home at a level higher than the other homes in the market. Remember, buyers have the freedom of choice. There is an abundance of property for sale on the market right now. With that kind of environment, you really need to stand out, especially if you have a home that is similar to a lot of other homes in the area. If you bought new construction and there's a subdivision of 300 homes and there's a new subdivision going in next door with 300 newer homes with newer features, you've got your work cut out for you. The third thing that you need to do is price competitively. This is a contest. If your home doesn't show better and have better pricing than the competition, buyers will go somewhere else. It's just the natural way that markets work. And so sellers will often think, oh, I should add 20,000 to my asking price, 30,000 to my asking price, so I have room to negotiate. But the problem is you're not going to have any offer to negotiate with if no one offers on your home. And you might not even have people come look at your home if you're overpriced by too much of a margin. So you need to price really sharply. Another thing, if we do start to see prices trend downwards in the coming months, another thing you should consider is pricing ahead of the market. If the average price for homes like yours is $750 today, well, you might consider pricing your home at $730, because if homes are taking 2 or 3 months to sell on average, and you price your home at $750, by the time you get an offer a few months from now, the average price might be $720, and you can end up chasing the market down as opposed to pricing slightly ahead of it and being the person who gets an offer 2 weeks in and sells for more than you would have if you tried a strategy where you priced it at what felt right and it ended up languishing. So that's it. You know, they're saying that the market is balanced, and as far as the statistics are concerned, it is. But remember that real estate statistics are from the past. Trying to use real estate statistics to price your home is kind of like driving down the highway looking in the rearview mirror trying to figure out where the road is going. It doesn't show you what's going to happen next. What's important is that you watch this closely, because right now things are still clipping along. It's just that we're seeing early warning signs, and as someone who's been through this multiple times, I can tell you we're concerned. With that said, it doesn't mean it's a bad market. It's just a different market, and this environment could actually be better for you to do the move you need to do than the market we've had over the past decade. So reach out to us and we'll help you strategize to figure out if this is the kind of environment that you can really take advantage of. There are a lot of people who stand to do this. And so I'm looking forward to a conversation if we get to have one. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And let's hang out. You can use the link in my description to book some time with me.